You're watching Giants Now by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Marshall Green. In today's video, we're going to break down what Adam Schefter had to say about the New York Giants potentially drafting a quarterback in round one and what he thinks they might do when it comes to trading up for a quarterback in round one or maybe having a guy like Michael Penix or Bo Nix fall to the Giants in round two. He sat down with Pat Leonard on his podcast called Talkin' Ball, and we'll react to those quotes on today's show. But first, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We are your one-stop shop on YouTube for everything Big Blue. We put out free, informative, entertaining updates every day on the Giants, and we're also going to be live for the NFL Draft, and we're trying to get to 46,000 subscribers by then. So if you want free, informative, entertaining updates every day on your New York Giants, hit that subscribe button right now. So Adam Schefter went on the Talkin' Ball podcast with Pat Leonard. Pat asked him about what he has heard about the Giants and potentially drafting a quarterback, and Schefter said this: "To me, in the end, the Giants are a team that has enough other needs, and a team that is trying to win now, that I would not guess that they would go quarterback at 6 right now." When Adam Schefter speaks, I think everybody should just sit down and listen. I'm not saying that Schefter has inside access to the Giants' war room and he knows what the Giants want to do, but if there's any media member in the world that has any sort of little bit of a hint to what the Giants want to do on draft day, Adam Schefter is that guy. So Schefter tells you at 6 they're most likely going to not select a quarterback. He talked about potentially drafting a receiver or an offensive lineman, which I would not be mad at all. I think a guy like Neighbors, Odunze, Marvin Harrison Jr., or like you guys know, Joe Alt would be an A-plus pick for the Giants in round one. But could they trade potentially back up into round one? Schefter didn't rule out that idea, and he didn't rule out the idea that the Giants could get a quarterback that they like in round 2 or round 3. More quotes from Adam. Quote, "I do think there will be a quarterback selected with a pick that's relatively high for the Giants, whether that's in round 2 or 3, or they move back up into round 1 if a guy like Bo Nix or Michael Penix is available, perhaps. But to me, to go quarterback at 6, when there's going to be some incredible players on the board, when they have some of the needs that they do, I think I would be a little bit surprised." So Schefter's going to be surprised if the Giants select a quarterback in round 1, but he said that he could see them trading up for Penix or Bo Nix. Let's talk Penix. We'll talk Bo Nix in a second. I don't hate the idea of the Giants and Joe Schoen trading back up into the later part of round 1 or maybe into the teens to select Michael Penix. Some of my quick thoughts on him. Some pros. Elite arm strength. I think he's got one of the best arms in this draft class. There is not a blade of grass that he cannot touch. In college football, the hashes are much wider. We've seen him on the left hash throw to the absolute deep corner on the right hash and vice versa. He can make every single throw that you want him to make as a quarterback. His deep ball accuracy is special. I think he throws outside the numbers just as good, if not better, than anybody in this class. I also think his mental processing is already at a point where he can be a plug-and-play type of quarterback in the NFL. In the intangibles, he's a leader. People, his players, his teammates, they rally around him. They loved playing for him. Anytime you've heard a guy like Rome Odunze or Jalen Polk speak about him, they rave about the person, leader, and player that Michael Penix is. All that stuff is awesome. Some cons that I have for him. He's not much of a playmaker when the play breaks down. He doesn't have much success breaking the pocket, scrambling, and finding chunk plays that way. He doesn't do that. On top of that, he's got some walking mechanics. He is a lefty, which I do not have a problem with, but he throws it a little bit weird. He's got a little Phillip Rivers in his throwing motion, a little bit more push than I would like instead of just slinging it over and over again. It's very repeatable, so I like that for him, but it's just a little bit weird, and maybe that's something I just have to get over. But overall, I am a fan of Michael Penix and what he has put on tape the last 2 seasons for the Washington Huskies. Back-to-back years of 65% completion percentage, back-to-back years of more than 4,600 yards, 8.4 and 8.8 yards per attempt, more than 70 total touchdowns in the last 2 years to just 19 interceptions. I like the way he takes care of the ball as well. But I don't think we could do a proper evaluation of Penix if we don't talk about his Indiana days when he had 2 major injuries and that he's a 24-year-old prospect. There is no I think ignoring that or omitting that on his resume. I also can't omit what he did against the University of Texas in the college football playoffs. That was one of the best games I have ever seen a quarterback play. That game sticks with me. It kind of reminds me of C.J. Stroud versus the University of Georgia last year. Not saying he is Stroud, but that game was very, very similar. He throws an electric deep ball, but he's 24 years old, and I don't love that. He is my number one quarterback in a clean pocket. Thing is, the Giants, they don't operate with a clean pocket all that often. Maybe that changes with new offensive line coach. He's not much of a playmaker outside of the pocket. He doesn't scramble well, and he doesn't look to run because of those injuries he's had. Elite at throwing outside the numbers, and in my opinion, he has a major injury risk. I have not seen the medicals for Penix that teams are getting, but I do worry a little bit about his injury history. Overall, I think Michael Penix is going to go inside the top 15. He seems to be rising off draft boards, whether it's going to be a team like the Las Vegas Raiders or the Denver Broncos or the Minnesota Vikings if they stick and pick at number 11. I could also see a team like the New Orleans Saints looking to draft a quarterback. I don't see a way where Penix makes it outside the first round. I think he actually goes in the top half of that first round. I want to ask you this question, though. We've given you somewhat of a scouting report on Penix. I'm sure you've watched the film and you have your own opinions made up. We'll break down Bo Nix in a second, but who would you rather be the quarterback for the Giants? Think about it like this. You got to trade into the top half of the first round for Penix, maybe the later half in round 1 for Nix, or you could stick and pick at 47. Factor that into your decision. Type MP or BN for the guy you want to see playing QB next year for Big Blue. Around the corner, we'll go in an in-depth breakdown of Bo Nix. I've got some strong opinions about him as a player. I like a lot of things that I saw on tape, but there are some things that had some light bulbs going off in my head, wondering if that will translate to the National Football League. Let's break it down, but first I got to give a huge shout out to today's sponsor, Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use that promo code CLNS and get hooked up with a 100% deposit match up to $100. Put $100 in your account, they'll give you $100 for free. All you do is create a lineup of 2 to 6 players, and you simply choose more or less on their projected stat line. And we've got somewhat of some breaking news with Prize Picks. They already have some season-long plays that you can make when it comes to the National Football League, and I've already got a 2-player lineup ready to rock and roll for when the season starts. I went with the more on the sack total for Brian Burns at 8.75. I think he's going to have a big year, and I'm expecting him to benefit playing alongside Dexter Lawrence and Kayvon Thibodeau. And I'm also going with more receiving touchdowns than Justin Jefferson at 8.5 receiving touchdowns. You can roll with my picks or fade my picks, but I kindly ask if you are going to play daily fantasy, you do it with Chat Sports' proud sponsor, Prize Picks. It's prizepicks.com/CLNS. Promo code CLNS, and they will match your first deposit up to $100. I'll make sure all that information is clickable down in the comments and description of today's show. So I want to reference again what Adam Schefter talked about when he mentioned the idea that the Giants could trade up for Michael Penix or Bo Nix. And I'm just going to say it. I am not a fan of trading up for Bo Nix, and I'm really not a fan of drafting Bo Nix. Let's start with some positives. He is one of the best quarterbacks, or had one of the best seasons as a quarterback when it comes to completing the football. He completed it at 77.4% of the time. He had the number 1 adjusted completion percentage in college football last year. And he doesn't turn the ball over. Only 10 interceptions in the last 2 years, 20 interceptions in the last 4 years. So he takes care of the football. He's kind of like a Rajon Rondo point guard, where he quarterback playing point guard, where he just gets the ball out, gets it to his playmakers, and lets them eat. He's got Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Ray Allen next to him. But I do have my concerns with Bo Nix as an NFL prospect, and I wonder if the offense that Oregon ran that kind of hid some of his flaws, will those become more problematic in the NFL, and will he be able to succeed in whatever offense he goes to? I'm not so sure. One of my major concerns with Bo Nix is just the offense that he ran with. Calling it a check down may not be fair. Maybe they just asked him to do it, but he consistently threw balls at or near the line of scrimmage, and I wonder if he could push the ball downfield. Nearly 30% of his passes in 2023 were thrown behind the line of scrimmage. He was number one in the nation in screen yards at 74.9%, and that's why his adjusted completion percentage is near 86%, and I think that's a little bit of fool's gold. He takes easy throws when others are open, and I get it. You can never go broke taking a profit, but some point and sometime you need to make plays downfield. I go back to Kirk Cousins against the Giants in the playoffs. Yeah, he completed a pass on 4th and 8, but he inevitably lost the game because he threw it 6 yards short of the sticks. I think Nix has just been too comfortable with that. And I wonder if he has the NFL arm talent to be able to be a dynamic passer. Look at the stats on screen. He completed his passes that had 20-plus air yards at just 52%. Behind the line of scrimmage, the guy threw 110 passes. He threw 157 from 0 to 9 yards. He only threw the ball 20-plus yards down the field 44 times and only completed 23 of those, only 52%. I have my worries if he will be able to go from the Oregon offense where everything was spoon-fed to you to being the man that has to move the chains every single Sunday. I also think his feet in the pocket could use some work. Happy feet a little bit. I'm not going to say he panics too much, but he does have some happy feet. When it's easy, his footwork is crisp. Like when he could take that 3-step drop, he'll hit that back foot, not reset and let it go. But when the first read's not open and there's a little bit of pressure in his face, I feel like he does a okay job of making sure his feet and his hips and his shoulders are married. He is not all that great when it comes to that. Pockets in college are different than the NFL, especially when playing for the New York Football Giants. Watching Bo Nix's tape reminds me a little bit of Derek Carr in the sense of when everything's good, when everything's on script, he could be really good. But I really think he's just the modern-day version of Colt McCoy, which can be a good player, but I wonder what the ceiling of that guy is, and can you build a top 10 offense around him? Does his success at Oregon translate? Throwing the screens, throwing behind the line of scrimmage, those little pop passes to the person in a jet motion. I'm not so sure. He succeeded because of how simplistic and easy and quarterback-friendly that Oregon offense was. I don't think he works through his progressions well, and maybe it's one of those things where he doesn't work through his progressions because they didn't ask him to, or maybe it's they didn't ask him to because he couldn't. I don't know, but I have some worries about that. And I think it is a little bit revealing that he was awful at Auburn. He was awful at the Senior Bowl. And I didn't think he spun it that well at the Combine. I know he had one of the higher miles per hours in the hard throw competition that they ran, but the ball didn't have a tight spiral. It kind of waddled out of his hands. I just have major question marks about him on the football field. But the biggest one for me is he built for New York? Does he have the mental toughness to operate in the number one sports media market in the NFL? In maybe the most ruthless media market. I didn't love what he had to say to Ryan Russillo when he sat down at a podcast with them. Russillo asked him, what's the biggest difference between seeing a starter at an SEC school and a starter for a team like Oregon in the Pac-10? Pac-12, whatever you want to call it. He says this, Bo Nix. In a sense, the hostility and maybe the unhealthy pressure that is added to you to 18 to 22-year-olds by, outside noise and fans, like it's almost like an unhealthy obsession in the South. I mean, I was that way growing up. I thought it was, life or death for football. And you move out here and you play the game as hard as you can, and you got great passion for the game, and it's just a little bit more laid back in a way. And it's a lot more like, we're proud of the person you are out there on the field. And if you give great effort and if you try really hard and obviously we're out there to win. Nobody goes out there to lose and look bad in front of a bunch of people, but I think that's the difference, quite frankly, is what it is out into college football in the South, and then how you are out here. Football is just a game and we find the joy in it. I don't love that. Because I'll tell you this much. Daniel Jones tries hard. Daniel Jones is a leader. Daniel Jones does everything right when it comes to playing the quarterback position outside of getting the job done on Sunday. And people are always holding his feet to the fire, myself included. Simply put, that's just not how the NFL works. I don't think there's any NFL team that's going to be paying you potentially $25 million per year if you get that second contract that's like, you know what? We went 3-14, but that Bo Nix kid, he really tried hard on Sundays, and we're going to be okay with that. I'm not going to call the guy soft or mentally weak, but I do wonder if he will be able to thrive in a pressure-filled atmosphere like the New York Giants. I don't love his feet when it's dirty. When the pocket's dirty, I don't love his feet. I have questions about his arm strength, and I wonder if his success at Oregon will translate, or do we get the Auburn Bo Nix where there's more on his plate? He can't stomach all of that. I'm not the biggest fan. I'll ask you, I understand why people like him, no doubt about it. I'm not going to say he's a terrible quarterback. He's just not my cup of tea. What about you? Do you want him on the Giants? Type Y for yes, type N for no. Make sure you're following me over on social media at @MarshallGreen_. You can find me on Twitter as well as on Instagram. And if you haven't yet, hit that thumbs up icon.